lunch break. So glad you tuned in. Sitting here today, and these guys aren't used to being in front of the camera.
Nope.
No,
Not at all.
Alex, but Nathaniel, you've made it in front of the camera before.
I've made it in front of the camera, but it never aired.
Did we cut that? Did we cut
did.
that show?
Yeah, we did.
Like, we don't have a whole lot of shows that end up on the editor's floor. It's our
No, they really don't.
It's our producer, Mike Harvey. We'll blame it on Mike today.
Yeah, they didn't like my
fault.
story.
Yeah, we're so glad you joined. We're not too ashamed to say like us, subscribe to our YouTube channel. Just go out there because I think we're at 21,000. I think that's our
Yeah.
I think we just
new
broke that.
follower. Isn't that kind of great?
It's amazing.
Yeah. We're ticking up there, and it's all because you guys tune in. We've had some great shows, and today is going to be the same. But Alex, you're with us today.
Yeah.
And your last name is pronounced Howe.
Yes, it is.
Yeah, the E's silent.
Yes. When I was growing up, everyone was like Alex Howie, and then I'm like, no, where'd you come up with that? Like, it would be IE, not just E.
Yeah.
So.
I like it. And Nathaniel Tweed.
Yep.
Right here with me. And so we're glad you joined in. We're going to talk a little bit about today, some things. And if you're out there and maybe you've thought in the past about adoption, maybe you thought about going out there on a limb and taking a chance to bring somebody into your home, that'd kind of be kind of a topic today, wouldn't it, Nathaniel?
Yeah, definitely. Because I am adopted.
Yes, he is.
I'm just going to say that out there.
We're all adopted into God's kingdom.
We all are.
Exactly.
You're right.
But you got adopted to the Tweeds family. John Tweed, his father, is a colleague of mine at Valley Bible Fellowship. We've been there 26 years. I always give your dad a hard time, though. I've been there 1 week, so I have seniority on him. And so we always have fun with that. But your mom's works for our church too, and wonderful gal Debbie Tweed. So we're glad you joined in. We're glad to start talking about this. But I'm going to jump right in. I remember being at work at Valley Bible Fellowship, and I remember your mom and your dad were discussing going to Peru to adopt a baby boy. And I remember the story came on that, and you probably can correct me, but your mom had a friend who was kind of a midwife because your mom was a nurse.
Yeah.
And so she had another nursing friend that was midwifing in Peru.
I don't know if she was a nurse, but she had a friend who was a midwife.
Yeah.
And she had a friend who was a midwife who happened to know my parents.
Yeah.
And that was kind of interesting. That was like such a cool God thing because I know that at the time, my birth mom, she wanted me to go to a Christian household. She wanted to make sure that the family that I was going to was 100%, God following and all that. And it just so happened that my parents here, were looking to adopt or looking for a son.
Isn't that how it works sometimes? If you're out there wondering how God's kingdom works, it works like this, right? I mean, you have in America, John Tweed and Debbie Tweed, who have a great daughter, and your sister, it's Katie. It's so neat to see that they felt a stirring in their heart. And as I know that they recognize this, they've made a couple trips to Peru.
No, I don't think so.
They didn't?
No.
So go ahead and correct me on this one.
So for that the time when that was happening, my mom was actually in Oklahoma at the time. Like she went from Peru to Oklahoma to have me. And Arkansas. I think it was Arkansas. Yeah, because I was born in Bentonville, Arkansas, so I'm technically Southern. That's and it's funny.
There's nothing about you Southern.
Yeah, there really isn't.
I'm just telling you right off.
It's funny though because my cousins, my parent, John and Debbie's, my parents, like their families from Arkansas, or a lot of our families out there, and so I still get to go out there. And
aren't they from the same town that Walmart? Was the first Walmart?
That's where I was born, Bentonville, Arkansas. That's where the first Walmart came.
Were you born in the Walmart?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Now that'd make the story better, but that's not true. So there was your biological father and mother were in Peru, but they weren't. We're not going to go too deep into the story, but they weren't able to keep you, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so that God kind of connected it because wasn't there a stipulation that the dad was in ministry?
No, that was my grandfather. He was in Peru, and he was a big missionary down there. He would help bring in a bunch of missionaries, and he was a big
wasn't he like the Billy Graham of Peru?
Kind of, yeah. He would bring in people like that. It's pretty cool. He's quite the amazing guy. It's like him and him and his wife, they both would do all that kind of stuff, and it was pretty awesome.
Yeah. So they wanted you to go to a ministry minded family.
Yeah, exactly. And when they were, looking, they were in contact with the midwife, and who happened to know my parents were looking for someone or looking for a child.
Isn't that funny? I always say this, that sometimes coincidence, if you don't believe in God or just the power of God, if you believe in coincidences, that's where God wants to remain anonymous.
Mm-hmm.
He had to be in this because he was tying all the loose ends together.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome, because I know they went to Arkansas to meet with, my birth mom and my grandmother and grandfather. And I guess my mom says that when she first met them, my grandmother stared her in the eyes and just stared for quite a while, I guess, and then said, "Okay, we are of the same,
Same
mind,
tribe,
same tribe, yeah,
same belief system." I know your mom, and your mom's pretty direct.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and so I can imagine that little stare down. I always love working with your mom because she is a very matter-of-fact person,
mm-hmm.
and she's a woman of faith. And your dad's a very, very not he's quiet, but he's always thinking. He's a thinker.
Mm-hmm.
John Tweed
Yep.
is a thinker. So I think when they came to this moment, they thought it through, they prayed it through, they recognized God's moving, and then they recognized that they were of likeness. And I got to believe that as your grandma and your grandpa were praying, and this is how God works sometimes, and then as Debbie and John were praying, he really just brought them together. And then there has to be that moment where it's like, yes, let's do this.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
I like that. And so then Nathaniel was born
Yep.
in Arkansas and came to live in Bakersfield.
He immediately went to Bakersfield. Yep.
Yeah.
What a place to go to. I love it here, though. I love Bakersfield.
Well, I remember you as a little boy coming to the office because I know Katie was in high school,
Mm-hmm.
and then as you were, we got to know you as a little baby.
Yeah.
But then we got to watch you grow, and I kind of got to spend a little bit of time knowing you because you went to the school that we had.
Yep.
Never
Never left the campus. That was literally my second home. I spent so many nights there too.
All you PKs say that. My daughters, who are consultants of our show, they say that. They also kind of incline the fact that they were born there. And I go, you guys weren't born here. Tessa was close, but Taylor not. But there again, so you had a ministry background
Mm-hmm.
as you were growing up. You were immersed in school.
Yep.
One thing I remember about you, Nathaniel, you were always winning the science fairs.
Yeah,
Remember?
I remember those. Yeah, I haven't thought about those in a while.
Yeah, you were always winning those and going on to the next level.
Mm-hmm.
Because you win one year and you went all the way to USC?
Yeah, I did. It was
Yeah.
at the State Science Fair.
How come I remember this and you don't?
It's been a long time. I try not to remember those stressful times.
But that was you. I remember seeing you grow up, and as they were raising you up, they were giving you a chance to grow your mind spiritually and also academically.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's what makes a rounded,
Yeah, my dad, super smart guy. He loves teaching me new things. He loves trying to
Building
expand
things.
my vocab. He jokes around. He's like, yeah, when I wanted to learn, I always read the dictionaries because I wanted to learn something new. I'm like, I won't do that, but good for you.
I don't think I know a thing that he doesn't know how to do.
Yeah, it's every time I still talk to him, he's just like, I'm like, yeah, I'm doing this thing. He's like, I remember doing that at your age. I'm like, with everything else, is like.
So your dad was on our show as
Mm-hmm.
a guest, and he holds the Guinness's Book of World Records for the longest letter.
Yeah, that's right.
And he wrote it to a girl, but it wasn't your mom.
Yeah.
He confessed that on the show. I
Oh my
remember
gosh.
that. Yeah, he did. He confessed it on the show. But it was funny because he wrote it, and it was on a big spool of, was it just paper or?
I don't remember what it was. It was like a. I don't remember what it was, but
It was
yeah,
continuous.
it was continuous.
Yeah, yeah.
It was
So-
impressive.
It was. So your dad's always kind of just, he was in the Navy, played the guitar. Now, I'll tell you this. Your dad's always been my favorite musician at our church.
Mm-hmm.
He always had, he had the tightest bands. Your dad had a great voice. He always did that, but he's hung up his guitar, he told me.
Yeah.
I will tell him.
He still plays.
Does he?
He still
That's
tinkers
cool.
around.
Yeah.
But it's neat because my nephew loves to play guitar.
Does
and
he really?
So my dad, gets a kick out of that because I didn't he tried to teach me guitar, and I know I could play it if I wanted to, but I just never finished. You know what I mean? I never got to the end there. I know the basic chords. I just can't strum very well. And
Were we considering having me teach you at some point?
That's right,
because we're roommates, just so everyone knows.
Yeah, that is true.
Yeah.
Before we talking about living together,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
We should clear that
No,
up.
for sure, yes.
Because Alex, you are married and your
Yes.
wife's over there. So.
Yes, absolutely.
I love that, Nathaniel, about your story, because your dad's always been adventurous.
Yep.
He's always been willing to try new things.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we're starting another campus, and your dad was saying today that, you know, he's in it, and he always is willing to try something he may not have tried before,
Yep.
but is willing to get in it. And I've always asked your dad when we would do things, I tell him, so you've done this before. He's like, never. but he does it. But he's passed that on to you. And I think that's important. I mean, one of the things I passed on to my kids were the love of sports, and not only just playing or being active, but also understanding it, watching it. You know, and I think, you know, as I've said this another time, my son-in-law to be, Danny, has thanked me before, because my daughter can play Call of Duty and she can play Madden football.
Yeah.
You know,
Nice.
so it's always important to make sure you help your kids learn something that maybe they can pass on too.
Yeah, and all that actually saved me too. You know, growing up in the church, being taught like basic grounded ethics and stuff. Because I mean, I did leave the church for a while.
I know you did.
Mm-hmm.
And that's but it was funny because those grounded ethics and all that stuff that I learned, you know, pulled me back in.
Well, you know, Nathaniel, I think a lot of times as parents, and if you're out there and maybe you're struggling raising a child, the Bible says that you train up a child in the way they should go. That's why those informative years are important. I remember you back when we were doing the spelling bees. Remember those?
Yep.
And all those things. My wife was your principal for the whole time, wasn't she?
It's so weird too because I cannot. I always call her Miss Touchstone.
Do you really?
I cannot get away from that. It's just.
but there again, we would come home and she'd say, you know, Nathaniel's won this, he's won that, and just always excelling in that. And as you teach your kids how to, you know, because life's hard.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
You know, I mean, you know, you tell kids that when they're young, and they grow up and they may not believe you or something, but sometimes experience will teach you that. So the Bible says, train up a child in the way they should go. So when they go out and they try something maybe that they feel they won't depart from the word. And you were an example of that. You were a great athlete in high school.
In high school, not anymore.
In
high school.
I don't think you've ever lost your ability to run. I know when we had Blake Vanderskoff from BCHS on, he was on our show. He was your athletic director.
Yeah.
And your coach had still impacted you.
Oh yeah.
So as you grew, you were doing the things and you were excelling at everything you put your hand to.
Yeah, and you know, my parents were amazing. You know, work ethic was one of the things I always thanked them for, because with them, I always looked up at my dad. One thing they always did was finish whatever they started. They were someone who would get in and do something,
important.
and they would just get it done, and it would look amazing. They might not be happy with it, but it looked, no matter what they did.
Yeah, everything your mom and dad have done, because they've been for our church. They went to Colorado. They've been to Las Vegas, because you lived in Las Vegas for a long time.
Yeah, I did.
And came back to Bakersfield, and so it is important, because your dad and mom have done that. I think your dad's first office in Vegas was a closet, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think it was. You're right.
It was. So that's important to have that leadership.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and they definitely work ethic passed on to me, because I love working. I love doing that, and I always thank them. I constantly thank them, like, thank you for teaching me this. At least, if anything, that's amazing.
Well, I think you were probably one of our best trained sound lighting technicians, like at 10.
Oh yeah.
I mean, you'd be back there working the sound light. And at Valley Bible Fellowship, we have some very complex equipment, and also when the lighting that you would do for Christmas and Easter was complex. And there's Nathaniel every year sitting there with your dad.
Yep, that was fun. That
learning
was fun
and absorbing
what
and learning fast. Yeah, you have to at Valley Bible Fellowship.
it was a lot of fun.
Well, and speaking of doing that at 10, I helped him out with some lighting. We were going up on the scissor lift, 15 feet maybe? And I'm like terrified. And he's like, why are you scared? Like, I've been doing this since I was like 10. I'm like, are you kidding me?
And I'm up there shaking the
lift. I'm like, stop it.
I've seen Nathaniel go up in a single man lift And I think the ceiling's 30 foot high, something like that.
Yeah, it's about that easy.
At the sanctuary, and I just turn around and walk out of the building.
Oh, I'd scare my mom. I used to bring oh, I can't get up high enough, so I'd bring a bar stool and bring the bar stool, sit in there, and then climb on the bar stool and sit a little higher.
Some of those lights are 50 pounds too.
Yeah, they're heavy.
They're insane.
Yeah, I saw Nathaniel troubleshoot things in the middle of in between services. You never got shook either. And I think, and I've never seen your dad shook either.
Yeah, I definitely get that from him. He is. I don't understand how he does it. He's just, everything's calm. He thinks things through. He's just like, he doesn't panic.
Yeah.
He's like, no matter what, it's gonna happen. And if it happens, oh well, you did your best. And I love that. Love that.
Well, you're out there and you're raising kids. It's good to have them come along with you, and they are learning, and they're watching, and they're seeing what people are doing. Right?
Yeah.
You're a testament to that. So what did take you off your path from walking with the Lord for a while? What happened there?
It was interesting. There was a lot of things I got thrown at once. You know what I mean? I was, it's just one of those things. It was right after high school. One of those things where it's just like you're questioning things, you're questioning life. I'm kind of like, I've grown up in church my entire life. What am I doing? You know? And, it didn't help that I was in a relationship at the time where I was unevenly yoked, and that kind of did not help at all.
So you can talk about that now. Where at the time, I know because I remember just the girl and the family she came from. But it's just interesting that you always were persistent in what you were, because you were committed.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And it was one of those things where we both grew up like perfect, like everything was fine, but it's just we drift in different directions, and it was one of those things where it wasn't hurting. We weren't staying in the Word, weren't doing that kind of thing, so it didn't help both of us at all. And it's one of those things where I was kind of like, all right, well, time to church hop, and I church hopped probably to just about every church in Bakersfield, and that just it didn't help me at all. It didn't help me learn. It didn't help me stay focused. You know, it's one of those things. You know, they always joke around. Even when I was a kid, they're like, if you miss one church service, that's it. And I'm just like, nah, that's not going to happen. And then I missed one, and I missed two, I missed four. A year later, I'm like, well, I haven't been to church in a year. This is kind of funny.
So you actually started experiencing what you heard as a young man come back and be applicable to your life.
Yeah. And, you know, it's funny because being a pastor's kid, it's not easy. It's not.
My
super,
kids tell me that all the time.
It's almost, it can hurt you in certain ways because people treat you a little differently. You know, it's funny because when I meet people, I don't, you know, sometimes people are like, oh, you're Pastor John Tweed's son. I'm like, yes, I am. And then there's a little different of change in attitude there, like certain things. And it's kind of funny too, because that affected me all through growing up. And so I kind of got tired of the PK thing, and that didn't help as well with all that stuff. It was kind of nice to be out and about away from the pastor's kid label.
My daughters, when they were growing up in high school, there was a show called Pastor's Daughters. You know, and it wasn't a great show, no. But they hated it. Taylor actually made it to her junior year in high school before somebody called her out and says, your dad's a pastor at Valley Bible. And she just tried to not run from the Lord, but run from that label. Yeah. Because, you know, then the next thing is, well, you going to the ministry? No, it's not.
Exactly.
They expect something more of you.
They do. I definitely was like, everyone acted like 100% was at church around me no matter what, and I'm like, well, I'm not like that all the time. Like, I'm not like, you can treat me like a normal person. And but that really affected me, and so I like, that did not help at all, and that drove me away, and that led me to a lot of crazy stuff through a couple of years. Like, I went through a lot in a couple of years. That could be a whole thing on its own. Like, it was crazy. But you know what was interesting was, and I tell parents this sometimes, because I have some parents who are just like, my child's not going to church anymore. They're not doing this. What do I do? And I've had some people say, can you please talk to them? And just like, because you came back.
Because you are experienced in that.
Yeah. But I always tell them the same thing, because one of the main things that brought me back was my parents would randomly text me, we're praying for you. We're praying for you. They always called me. They'd be like, hey, I'm praying for you right now. And it's funny too, because there are times where I was about to make some really dumb decisions, and I'm just like, well, tonight I feel like, and then I get a text from my mom, hey, I just thinking about you, and I'm praying for you. God's going to lead you. And I'm just like, yeah, why would you text me that now? Okay, fine. And
but that's the truth.
It is. Yeah.
My kids will talk about how you can feel the prayers. Yeah. They tell us to this day, hey, it's undeniable. We can tell when you guys are praying.
Yeah.
And that's hopefully hope for you parents out there that maybe have someone that is maybe, you, in your opinion, not going the right way. Because it did help you, right? To be able to see another side and realize that the way I've been taught is the right way.
Yeah, it is, because it's you know, it's crazy because it's like there's a lot of things that could have gone wrong in those 2 years. There's a lot of things that could have gone wrong, but you know, with God's grace and through prayer and friends, you know what I mean? Like these guys blessed me a lot. You know, they're an amazing Christian couple. You know, it's really neat seeing that and being able to have supportive friends and stuff like that and people praying for you. That really brought me back.
What would you say to somebody who's out there right now, maybe going through this? What would be some advice you'd give them?
Some advice.
You're experienced.
Yeah, it's interesting. You know, it's the people you hang around with. Honestly, it's one of those things. Like, it's funny because I hung around not some great people most of the time.
The Bible says bad company corrupts good morals.
And I mean, these guys were honestly my compass for the longest time because all my friends were. I had a great group of friends with these guys and some of my other really close friends. They're really, really great people. But I hung out with other people who were not great for me. But these friends kept me staying true, and then also just, I don't know, because like as much as like I wanted to, I could never, because of how I was raised, I would never said God isn't real. I always knew God was real. I just tried to ignore it, that he was there all the time.
Tune him out. Turn his voice
exactly.
down.
Yeah.
And does that work?
No, it didn't.
I always say that to people when they talk to me about that. I go, how'd that work? Didn't work at all.
Yeah, didn't work at all. He was still there no matter what.
His voice still gets through, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
It's crazy too because I don't know. I feel blessed. You know, I mean, to always have friends and family in my life constantly praying for me and stuff,
and being there for you, and not giving you condemnation. If you're out there and you're thinking condemning somebody for doing something, that is not the right way to do it. Basically, praying for them. If they ask, give them correction.
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely.
And there again, it was good that you were there, Alex. For this time.
And it's funny too, because you always hear about it in church. Those like, it was funny. Even I think Pastor Ron said it one time recently. He's just like, you start thinking things, you start growing out of things where they're like, maybe this isn't good for you. And I'm like, nah, sure, you know, whatever. Like, and then recently, the more and more I've been, you know, trying to get back into church, because I'm still trying to get back to where I was. I still feel like I'm growing out of things now, where it's just like, I'll hear something, I'm like, I don't need to hear that anymore. I don't need to do that. And it's true. It is true. But it doesn't make life any less fun.
No.
I'm still having fun with everything.
Yeah. Well, and I think you're between Taylor and Tessa, right? Yeah, because Taylor's 26, Tessa's 23, and you're 25. Yeah, I thought that. So you're still young.
Yeah.
So Alex, when you saw your friend going through this, what went through your mind?
I feel like, because I'm not much older than him, I think it was less of a like definitely not a parental figure kind of feeling, but it was like a little bit more of like an older brother kind of thing, because I don't know every single thing about him, but I feel like we have like a different kind of best friendship where it's like we both have been not our best around each other, and I think that adds a different kind of relationship, because we see each other almost every single day. And it's not like I have a best friend where I will see him once every 6 months and we catch up like no time has passed. But I haven't seen his bad days. The only time I've ever seen him like upset is like they had a bad breakup or something, and like had him come over or something like that. And so Nathaniel and I's relationship is so strong, and it's very much like we're like on a really gnarly like backpacking trip. And I feel like there's certain days where it's like super easy. It's the elevation gain or drop is not super crazy. And then other times it feels like figuratively we're going to die. And so, but that's the beauty of our friendship is that we can have those kind of moments. And I think that, basically I don't think I'm going to have another friendship like yours and like in the best way possible. And one day, like, my wife and I are eventually gonna have kids, and then we're gonna probably part ways in a roommate sense. Yeah. And that's gonna be really tough, I can tell. Yeah. So, but until then, we're gonna.
We having a breakup here?
Not yet.
Not the three amigos.
You know, it's crazy because, you know, we're roommates. We work together. We had that situation for so much
Because
long.
you worked together at,
Yeah, we did.
and now you're working together at MLH Solutions.
Yeah.
You know, you guys have had a unique opportunity to not only live together, but also be able to be co-workers together.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's also another dynamic that we have. It's like we're not just best friends; we're also coworkers, and not a lot of people can do that. Like
Yeah, that's
sometimes,
true.
like that will end friendships.
Yeah.
So
So how do you guys solve that when you get home? Because you got a wife. I mean, because it is complex. I mean,
Yeah.
it's unique. I mean, so
A lot of
how
people
do you
question
maintain
that immediately too.
Do
It's
they? Oh, yeah.
hilarious. Yeah, it's just like especially when I don't know why. I guess it's weirder when I say it because I'm just like, yeah. Do you live with roommates? I'm like, yeah, I do. And like, oh, cool. I'm like, yeah. And they're like, how does that work? And they're like, oh, they're married, you know, and they're cool. And they're like, you live with a married couple?
yeah.
Like, how
Well,
does
it's the same way too. Because
Yeah.
like I'll be like, oh, me and my wife did this. Me and my wife did that. And then I'm like, oh, I'm hanging out with my roommate. And they're like, your wife? Do you call her the roommate? And I'm like, no. We
give you a ministry opportunity, right?
exactly. And then they realize they're like, oh, but like it's confusing at first for many people.
Yeah.
Good to be able to clear up the confusion.
Exactly.
It is.
Yeah.
It is.
It saves money too.
So what advice would you give to somebody out there who has a friend that's going through stuff? What would be something you would tell them? Because sometimes it's awkward.
Yes.
Yeah.
You know, I've had some friends that I've seen go through some rough times. Some make it, some not.
Mm-hmm.
But one thing I've always tried to do is stay the same. Be the same me.
Yes.
You know, I can be the same way to a friend that's a believer or someone who doesn't believe.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and I treat them both the same. you
Yeah.
know, and I try to be thermostatic.
Yeah.
What would be the advice you'd give, especially for young people?
Yes. Especially if it's like a close friend / roommate and they're going through some stuff, just be who they need you to be for the most part. But there will be days where you're going to have to be the bad guy. There's been certain times where
Hard
it's
to
like,
think of you as a bad guy, Alex.
no, I know, but
The more and more I get to
I know
you.
I'm so nice all the time.
You are.
But
I've seen you and your boss and our producer Mike Harvey.
mhm.
I
Oh, yeah.
traveled with you guys.
Yes, we always joke around though.
You
That's
do.
all, that's what
You
we
do.
Yeah,
I had to clear that up one time with Mike going, you guys okay?
yeah. 99% of the time it's okay.
Yeah.
But the one time,
Yeah.
no. But yeah, it's being real with someone. But you have to also gauge what they need, and sometimes you can just see it on their face. Sometimes they just need you to either just listen or to leave them alone, and other times you got to tell them, hey, you messed up, or hey, you need help. And it's gotten easier to be able to read your face, but they just go deadpan. But I think sometimes people forget that being a good friend doesn't mean you have to be a good person all the time with them. You have to kind of not rubbing salt on the wound is definitely not the way to put it, but you got to be real. Like you got to be harsh a little bit sometimes with them.
Well, honestly, I think you have relationships.
Yeah.
And I think people resolve conflict in every relationship.
Mm-hmm.
And what it is, you have sometimes conflict, or you have somebody who may be getting off track, and sometimes it's just helpful advice.
Yeah.
Sometimes they take it, sometimes they don't. Hey, this concludes part 1, and I had a good time.
Oh,
Yeah.
absolutely.
I know more about Nathaniel and Alex, and I'm
Yeah.
excited to get to know more because your
Exactly.
journey is still going. I always tell people that when people come into our life, which is a journey, don't take a snapshot and just freeze it there because they haven't seen the other chapters.
Yep.
Can't judge a book by the chapters. You got to finish the book. So
Exactly.
enjoyed doing segment 1 and
We'll be back for part 2.
Yeah.
part 2.